Okay, here are the answers to the Chapter 8 quiz you took. I'm just going to go over them really quickly because I want to make sure you know how to do these before we take the test. So one question I had was number 3, and it said find the geometric mean and give each answer in simplest radical form. And this is where most people goofed. So geometric mean is where you take x over something, 5 halves, equals 15/8 over x. And if you want to, or the shortcut is x squared equals the two things multiplied together. So if you multiply, 5 times 15 is going to be 75, and 2 times 8 is going to be 16, and that equals x squared. Now, to get that by itself, do not put this into your calculator and make it a decimal, which is what most of you guys did. Leave it alone, because the next thing you have to do is square root each side to get x by itself. So x equals the square root of 75 over the square root of 16, which we know is just 4. Now you have to do the factor tree for 75. Well, 75 is the same thing as 3 times 25, and 25 breaks into 5 and 5. So now we have a pair of 5s. They go out together. We have a loner 3. That stays in, and that's all over 4. And most people did not get this correct. So make sure you know how to get that. Maybe try to do number 2 and see if you can do number 2. Okay, the next question that a lot of people goofed on was number 5. Number 5, they want to do solve for x, y, and z. They don't say if you need to leave it in simplified radical form or anything. So, to do that, the easiest thing to do is to find out what y is first, just by doing Pythagorean theorem. So first, I'm going to do 24 squared plus y squared equals 12 radical 5 squared. Okay, so 24 squared, where's my calculator at? Oh. 24 squared is 576, and this squared, 12 squared is 144, radical 5 squared is 5, so 144 times 5 is going to be 720. And then you subtract, and then you square root, and you should get y equals 12. Some people did get this part correct. Okay, so now in this triangle, we know that this part is 12. If you notice this whole triangle, the big triangle is a right triangle. And we have two equations that'll help us figure, two shortcuts that could help us figure out what x and z are. One is that the altitude squared is going to equal the two parts of the hypotenuse multiplied together. So that would be 12 squared equals x times 24. The other shortcut that you could use is that the leg squared equals the part of the hypotenuse times the whole hypotenuse. And most people are forgetting these two shortcuts. I guarantee you there will be a question like this on your exam. So the easiest thing would be to do with altitude squared, since we know what 12 is. So to find out what x is, this is the second thing we're going to do. We're going to say that 12 squared equals x times 24. That's exactly what this first shortcut tells us. And then we solve from there, and you should get x equals 6. Now we know that this part is 6. How do we figure out what z is? You could just do Pythagorean theorem. 6 squared plus 12 squared equals z squared, and you should get that z equals 6 radical 5 in simplified form, or 13.4 as a decimal. Okay, so that's your answer for number 5. Number 7, a land developer needs to know the distance across a pond. What is AB? So we want to figure out what this is. We're going to notice this whole big thing is a right triangle, and AC is the altitude. Okay, just like number 5. So we can use these two shortcuts for number 7 as well. However, we don't need to know what the altitude is, which is what most people did. We want to know what the leg is. So we're not going to use this shortcut. We're going to use a second shortcut, which is that the leg squared, so x squared, equals the part of the hypotenuse closest to it, which is 22, because this is the whole hypotenuse of the entire thing. So 22 is closest to x, times the whole thing, and 22 plus 8 is 30. You do that, and you should get that x equals 25. Oops, sorry, I don't know why I put 27. 25.7 meters. Instead, round to the nearest tenth of a meter. Okay. Number 9, use a special right triangle to write each ratio as a fraction. Most people did not write it as a fraction. So For number 9, sine 30 degrees. We have our 30, 60, 90 triangle here. And we know that, I didn't really draw it correctly, but the one across from the 30 is always x. The one across from the 60, the hypotenuse is always 2x. And the one across from the 60 is always x radical 3. So here's our triangle, our special right triangle, and we know that because it says 30 degrees. We want to find the sine of 30 degrees. Sine stands for opposite over hypotenuse. So the one opposite of it is x. The hypotenuse is 2x, and all you have to do is simplify. The x's are going to cross out, and you're left with 1 over 2. Pop it in your calculator, and it'll tell you that sine 30 degrees is 0.5, just to check your work. Okay, the next half, most of you guys did get correct, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Number 14 and 16, a lot of you guys solved for everything. They only wanted QR for 14, and they only wanted LM for 16. So I'll do LM because I think this is the one that most people got incorrect out of the two. So LM, we want to find out what LM is. They give us an angle and they give us the hypotenuse. It's across from the 90 degrees. We have hypotenuse and we have this side which is opposite of it because it's not touching. So since we have opposite and hypotenuse, we're going to have to use sine. So sine of the angle 62 equals opposite over hypotenuse. The opposite of dividing by 4.2 is multiplying. So literally you put 4.2 times sine 62 in your calculator, and you're going to get that it should be 3.71 centimeters. The answer for number 14 is 23.30 inches. So make sure you get 14 correct as well. Okay, number 18, most people did a great job here. You could use Pythagorean theorem if you want, and you got that HJ equals about 12.62. To find the angles, and again, I was really impressed. Most people did really well. If you wanted to find out what angle H is, well, we have the opposite and we have the adjacent. We don't know anything about the hypotenuse yet. So we could say that tan of angle H equals opposite over adjacent. And then since we're solving for angles, that means we have to use inverse. So literally in your calculator, you put inverse tan of 10.5 over 7. And you should have gotten that angle H equals about 56 degrees. And then when you add them up and subtract it from 180, or subtract this from 90, you're going to get that angle J equals about 34 degrees. Okay, and then 20, a lot of people didn't do, maybe didn't have time, I'm not sure. But when it says that the slope is 1 over 18, slope stands for rise over run. So the rise means it's going up 1, the run means it's running 18. Okay, and we want to figure out what this angle is. Since we want to find an angle, we're going to use inverse trigonometry, and we have an opposite side and we have an adjacent side. So you're going to use inverse tan opposite over adjacent. Pop that into your calculator and you should get about 3 degrees. So here are the answers to that quiz. You will see questions very similar to this on your exam.